What an offseason for the Denver Broncos. From the hiring of a new head coach and coaching staff to creating a brand new culture inside the building, this team has seen a lot of change since the end of last season. Since there's been so much change going on here at the Centura Health Training Center, we wanted to catch you up on some of the top moments from the past 6 months. Thanks so much for tuning in, Broncos Country. Team reporter Sydney Jones here. Let's start at the very beginning. The Walton-Penner family ownership group opened up the offseason by hiring a proven winner as the team's 20th head coach in franchise history, Sean Payton. Let's take a look back at his first day on the job in his introductory press conference.
Last month, I said we were looking for a strong leader who could build a winning culture, one with accountability and discipline, and also build a really strong identity on offense. I couldn't be more proud of where we came out, and we have the perfect coach in Sean Payton.
There are a lot of people that embrace and are comfortable with change, and then there are a few that aren't. And so I think just trying to have an open mind to the direction we're going, but a clear vision as to where. Open mind, clear. And then there's a little bit of old school mixed in with the new school. And so I'm not the 31-year-old coach who's got all these. There's something I have in the back of my mind relative to how I think we need to be successful that never changes. And those are things that I look forward to putting in place.
Head coach Sean Payton wasted no time in establishing a new culture here in Denver, starting with the hiring of a new coaching staff. He hired Joe Lombardi as offensive coordinator, Vance Joseph as defensive coordinator, and Ben Kotwika as special teams coordinator.
You're looking for guys that really care about teaching, care about the players, but also care about working in a setting that's conducive to winning, and that means sometimes being able to kind of lay down your arms, let the egos, kind of go by the wayside and just focus on what's best for the team. And then when that happens, you get something, and then pretty soon everyone benefits from that.
In total, Sean Payton hired 27 coaches, finalizing his staff on March 25th. Here's a look at the entire coaching staff. During that time, the new league year began, and with that, the start of free agency. And the Broncos wasted no time making some big moves on the first few days. Sean Payton and company reimagined the offensive line with the signings of right tackle Mike McGlinchey and guard Ben Powers, and added an ascending player to their defensive line in defensive end Zach Allen. Plus, the team brought back last year's leading tackler, inside linebacker Alex Singleton. They also added to their backfield with the signing of running back Samaje Perine, bolstered their tight end room with the addition of Chris Manhertz, and added Jared Stidham to their quarterback room. And for the rest, here's a look at every free agent signing the team made this offseason. Owner and CEO Greg Penner, owner Carrie Walton-Penner, owner Rob Walton, head coach Sean Payton, general manager George Payton, and team president Damani Leach then flew down to Arizona to attend the NFL's annual league meeting. It was the first time we heard from the team's leadership since the signings of the new free agent acquisitions. Greg Penner, George Payton, and Sean Payton all spoke on their aggressive approach to free agency and the talent they acquired.
You definitely don't win the season in free agency, and you don't want to have to necessarily spend that way every year, but we just felt like this year, with lack of draft picks, the needs that we had on the offensive line, that was the approach that we needed to take. Really happy with how it turned out and the players that we got.
Going back to when we made the trade for Russ, we knew that one of these years we'd have to be aggressive, and this was kind of, and then when we got Sean here and we met, and if there were players there that at positions of need, we were going to be aggressive. We don't have the picks, we only have 5 picks, and so we were aggressive, and we had a plan, and I felt like we executed that plan.
You evaluate these players, and you look at all the tape, and then you look at the makeup and the intelligence, and we felt like they were really good fits for what we want to do. There was a consistency, that you saw, that you felt like you were getting each week. Health, makeup, all of that gets factored in.
As for the month of April, the team started their voluntary offseason program, in which Phase 1 focused on strength and conditioning, running and lifting weights. Phase 2, installing Sean Payton's system, didn't come until May. Meanwhile, General Manager George Payton and company prepared for the 2023 NFL Draft. The Broncos went into this year's draft with 5 picks and ended the weekend with 6 new additions. Denver opened up their weekend trading up in the second round to select wide receiver Marvin Mims Jr. with the 63rd overall pick. They then drafted linebacker Drew Sanders in the 3rd round with the 67th pick, then traded back into the 3rd round to select defensive back Riley Moss, 83rd overall. George Payton and Sean Payton then started day 3 of the draft with the selection of safety J.L. Skinner, 183rd overall. They then acquired tight end Adam Troutman and the 257th overall pick from the New Orleans Saints in exchange for the 195th overall pick, which brings us to Denver drafting center Alex Forsythe, the team's last selection in this year's draft. Both head coach Sean Payton and general manager George Payton were pleased with their selections and the talent of this rookie class.
Man, I was excited. And the process and the hours going into it, all of that, because it was new for me, and there's elements of it that were new relative to how we scout, and then, man, there's some things that that were fantastic, and if you started really at the beginning of it all, and you said, here's free agency, here we are, the draft just ended, I'm really excited.
The Broncos' 2023 schedule was then released. Denver is slated to play 4 primetime games and will open and close their season versus AFC West rival, the Las Vegas Raiders. It's the first time since 2020 that the Broncos will open their season at home, that game taking place on Sunday, September 10th at 2:25 p.m. Mountain Time. The team hit the practice field for the first time this offseason for the start of OTAs in May. Let's take a look back at some of those highlights. The team started to learn and practice this year's system. Having learned several different schemes the past few years, Sean Payton discussed what that transition period is like for the players and their ability to adapt.
Players are resilient. They're going to learn. I think it's something that's talked about a lot. He's been with coordinators are going to change, position coaches are going to change. I think these guys are picking it up. Certainly, we're mindful of some of the things that they've used before. Russell. If there's something that they know well, then we'll learn it as a staff and then, adapt with it. But yeah, players will learn it.
Throughout these OTA practices, we learned how Sean Payton's coaching style helped with that transition. Specifically, his attention to detail and ability to communicate the why behind his practices.
If I had to sum it up in one word, I'd say educational. He's really good at explaining how he wants things done and why it's being done. And I think it gives a great purpose to everyone, before and after each, said period, whatever it is.
Coach Payton being a guy that has been very firm on his emphasis on the attention to detail, whether it's pre-snap penalties, whether it's, guys staying back when we're running plays, everything to him is very intricate. There's a reason, a rhyme and a reason to everything that he's doing. And for us to be working on situational football as in depth as we are in OTAs is amazing. It shows us that he understands and knows what to expect when we get into these games. There's going to be no waiver. There's going to be no question marks. Everyone understands that he knows what he's doing. We're all going to be on the same page when we go out there and execute.
Like wide receiver Cortland Sutton said, there was a huge focus on situational football during OTAs. Head coach Sean Payton said there are 43 end-of-game, end-of-half, or other in-game scenarios for which this team will need to be prepared for. He detailed why it was so important to get that work in early on in the offseason.
In a perfect world, the whole bench is going to know what to expect at the end of a game in a certain situation. So we spent all of the walkthrough, you guys saw it, on about 8 different situations. Training camp each day, we'll take 2, we'll review. They have to know those cold, and they have to know what we're thinking so that when they come up, we can execute. And if you don't address one because it doesn't come up until every 2 years, then you're going to be faced with it and no one's going to know what to do. So it's really just trying to get really specific with the details of certain game situations that actually happen. We have video of it, and we have statistics of it, and then, what's the strategy when it happens.
We also heard from quarterback Russell Wilson during OTAs. It was the first time Russell spoke to the media since the end of the 2022 season. He reflected on the previous year and detailed how he planned to have the best offseason of his life.
You always reflect on every year, ever since you come into the National Football League, the things that you can always do better, things you can always work on. You always want to be in the best shape of your life. I'm ready for that. I feel better than ever. I think also too, mentally, there's always the journey. There's always the journey of the highs and lows. There's been a lot of highs. There's been some tough lows, but adversity, you got to be able to handle it all, and I'll be ready to handle it.
Plus, we saw running back Javonte Williams and wide receiver Tim Patrick return to the field for the first time since suffering their respective injuries. Head coach Sean Payton said he remains optimistic Javonte will be ready for the start of training camp. And then came mandatory minicamp, the final 3 days of the offseason program before the players and coaches took off for their summer breaks. The final days for the team to put in work with head coach Sean Payton before the start of training camp. Head coach Sean Payton was pleased with where the team finished the offseason program this year, but said there's more work to be done.
I'm pleased with our attendance. I'm pleased with our health right now. I think the guys are working hard. And yet it's June. And so we've got a lot of work ahead of us. And, we'll be anxious when the time comes and training camp comes to get started, and we'll go from there.
Offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi added to that by emphasizing how important training camp will be in evaluating every player.
Trying to get the fundamentals of the offense down, the formations and our splits. And it's hard to evaluate sometimes in shorts. We're not playing real football. Like, I think I like some of the running backs, but I've never seen them take on a tackle. And think I like the offensive linemen, but we're not really blocking like you're going to when it's real football. So really our goals here is, assignment, alignment, making sure we know what to do, making sure they understand how we're trying to coach it. And, as training camp goes on and we get the pads on, I think we'll get a better evaluation of each guy individually.
And as for the defense, defensive coordinator Vance Joseph spoke on how good this Denver defense has been the past several years. The challenge for him will be taking what they did well last season and continuing to improve on that. Vance Joseph was excited to return to the Broncos organization this offseason, calling Denver home. But more than that, he was excited to have the chance to work with Sean Payton.
I think Coach is one of the best play callers in NFL history. I mean, his personnel groups he uses on every down basis is really tough to match and kind of figure out where he's going next. He understands defenses very well as far as fronts and coverages, so he's always attacking what you're doing best. So going against Coach, man, it's been some good days, it's been some bad days also, but he's always ahead of the curve as far as your next move.
Plus, the team added another pass rusher to their defense, outside linebacker Frank Clark. Head coach Sean Payton discussed his decision to bring the three-time Pro Bowler to Denver.
A pressure player, someone that I remember doing a lot of work on when he came out of the draft. And we followed him, obviously, at Seattle first and then in Kansas City. It's one of the areas that, that we paid close attention to. And, we'll find a role within what we're doing where he can help us.
When you think back to when head coach Sean Payton arrived here in Denver, he said it was realistic for Broncos fans to expect a completely different culture here this year. And not even 6 months into the job, I think it's safe to say he's already accomplished that. And for me, that's the biggest takeaway from the 2023 offseason.
The recipe for culture starts with, who's in the building. It's hard to have the right culture if you don't have the right ingredients. And then it's the attention to every detail. I think there's got to be passion involved with that. And so in the procurement process of players, you've really got to dig into, and it's the hardest thing now for us, is finding guys that truly love their job. And it's not a slight against, but it's finding the right people to build the culture around.
Which brings us to now, the start of training camp. I look forward to seeing you all out there on Friday for the first day of practice.